الله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا أما بعد إن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الحدي حدي محمد وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. First and foremost, I'd like to apologize for my lateness. Inshallah, we'll still make sure we get out of here on time and we'll keep the khutbah brief for today, inshallah. So as we all know, Ramadan has been over for a few weeks. And that time of spiritual high that we felt, the extra motivation to do worship, the elevated spirituality, the extra prayers, the extra dua, the recitation of the Quran, maybe some of that now is starting to wear off. And we might find ourselves back into our pre-Ramadan routine. And it's very easy to get caught up back in that life, and as we call it, the rat race of life. And if we've heard this term before, I was actually curious what it actually meant. How is it defined? And it says, it's a way of life in which people are caught up in a fiercely competitive struggle for wealth or power, an exhausting and usually competitive routine. Maybe this sounds familiar to some of us, because from a very young age, we are taught to compete in school so that we can get the best scholarships, so we get to the best colleges, so we get the highest GPA, so we get into the best professional school, into the best medical school, so we get the best job, so we can work day in and day out and get the best promotion and buy the biggest house, the nicest cars, and so on. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that we should be racing for instead? And maybe for some of us, this doesn't apply as much. Maybe we're not competing for the wealth. Maybe some of us are competing, with the children, the other children in the community and the other families. Or maybe some of us are looking at someone else and be like, man, why is he married to this person? I wanted that person. Or maybe they're competing about the wedding of their kids. That person had such a nice wedding for their kid. Mine's going to be better. Whatever it might be, we find ourselves in this constant race against one another. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أُولَٰئِكَ يُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ وَهُمْ لَهَا سَابِقُونَ. They are the ones who race towards good, and they will be the first to achieve them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing those groups of people. It says earlier in the surah, the people that are are struck by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who are they? This is one of the qualities mentioned, that they are racing toward good things. We have people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, the multi-billionaires of the world. They're competing to see who can get to $200 billion first, or who can launch the first rocket into the sky. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, don't be concerned with those things. Don't be overly consumed by those things, because we have something better to be racing towards. We have good to be rushing towards. And I remember a story that our MSA advisor once mentioned to me, that he was on his drive home from school. He's a professor. So he was driving home and it was a downpour. And on the side of the road, he sees a man who has no umbrella and he's just sitting there waiting for the bus. And for a moment in his heart, he was like, I should ask this person if they need something. I should ask them if I can give them a ride, or at least offer them an umbrella. But for whatever reason, he said, I'm running late, I have to go home, my family's waiting, it was a long day at work. kind of made an excuse for himself and he kept driving. But the guilt kept, his heart didn't feel right. So a few minutes later, he actually turns back around and he drives past that corner again and he finds that the person's not there anymore. And at this moment, he describes he felt so much regret. Why? Because he missed an opportunity to do what this verse is saying, to rush towards good. So when we have an inclination to do good, if all of a sudden we're like, man, I want to make dua for this thing, don't wait. In that moment right there, make dua. If in that moment you're like, man, today I feel like going to the masjid, run to the masjid. Don't wait another minute. Don't let the shaitan trick you into delaying your plans. You know, like 10 years ago, if a friend of ours told us to invest in Bitcoin, we would be like, and what is this? No one uses this. It was worth like pennies back then. And today we look back on it and we're like, gosh, if only we had done that, right? That level of regret that you feel for not making the right investment choice, feel that regret next time you miss out on an opportunity to do good. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. It is reported by Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu. For the sake of time, we're just going to read the translation. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Be prompt in doing good deeds before you are taken by turbulence, which would be like part of the dark night. A man would be a believer in the morning and turn to disbelief by the evening. Or he would be a believer in the evening and turn disbeliever in the morning, and would sell his faith for worldly goods." And in the commentary in Riyadh al-Salihin, it says, this hadith tells us that the day of resurrection will be preceded by a long chain of calamities. Because of the rush of these calamities, religion and faith will lose their value. There will be a race for wealth, so much so that people would not hesitate to compromise their religion and faith to acquire wealth. People will rapidly change their faces. And just reading this commentary gave me chills this morning, because this is exactly how things are playing out right now. That principles, values are nothing, and people are so quick to overturn them. So we have to be trailblazers, we have to be pioneers, we have to be, as it says in another verse, as-sabiqun as-sabiqun, the people that are not just doing good, but we are the front runners of good. We are encouraging others to do good. And whenever there's an opportunity to do good, we don't back down from it. And we have so many countless examples from the times of the companions that we could get into of how they set this example for us to do good. So I know this was brief, but if there's anything that we can take home, is this sense of motivation that I want to act on this verse. I want to do good, and not just anytime, but I want to do it right away, as soon as I have the opportunity. So I'll leave us with some things that we can do on a day-to-day basis that can inshallah implement some of what we've discussed today in the verse that was mentioned. When we have an inclination to go to the masjid, as I mentioned, race to the masjid. If we're at the masjid and you see an elderly person who's maybe carrying a chair or carrying some stuff with them, go up to them and offer your help. Offer a lending hand. If you're at home, encourage your children not just to have the best grades, in their math and science class, but ask them how much, what are they reciting in Quran? What have they memorized over the past week? And it's okay if you incentivize them at this age. Give them some sort of reward. Make it a bit of a competition in your family. Encourage each other. Who's going to stay more patient next time somebody gets angry? Who's going to hold their tongue? Right? Make this a family environment so that your kids aren't thinking you're only prioritizing this dunya for them. Because if they only hear you, talking about the house and the car and the promotion and the job and the money and the stocks and what have you, they're going to think that that's the only important things in our lives when we know that that's not the case. So do good, promote good for yourselves and for your families, and implement these things within your homes. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to rush towards that which is good and keep us far away from that which is bad. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from the front runners of good. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين. في الصلاة.